The glittering chandeliers of London's high society have witnessed countless historic encounters, yet few moments in modern royal history possess the surreal, cinematic allure of a specific cold November night at Kensington Palace. Behind the imposing wrought iron gates and the manicured lawns of the royal residence, a gathering was taking place that would forever blur the lines between traditional British monarchy and global pop culture royalty. To understand the sheer gravity of this evening, one must first appreciate the rigid, carefully choreographed world of the British royal family. Every movement, every public utterance, and every formal interaction is typically calculated months in advance, governed by an unwritten code of decorum that has survived for centuries. For the senior members of the House of Windsor, control is not merely a preference, it is an absolute institutional necessity. Yet, underneath the surface of this flawless, dignified exterior lies a vulnerability to the unpredictable currents of modern celebrity culture, a world driven by raw charisma and unparalleled social influence. On this particular evening, the air inside the palace walls was thick with anticipation, filled with a prestigious crowd of young people, charity supporters, and a highly selective group of international A-list icons who had gathered for a winter gala designed to support the youth homelessness charity, Centrepoint. It was an event destined for the history books, not because of the funds raised or the high-profile speeches delivered, but because of a spontaneous, almost hypnotic sequence of events that caught the second-in-line to the British throne completely off guard, stripping away the armor of royal protocol in front of a stunned audience. Before we dive into the extraordinary details of how a global pop sensation managed to bypass centuries of royal training with a single look, take a moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the untold stories of the world's most fascinating figures. The setting for this unprecedented encounter was an intimate stage erected within the palace grounds, where the legendary American rock icon Jon Bon Jovi was scheduled to provide the acoustic soundtrack for the evening. Sitting comfortably in the front row, enjoying a rare moment of relaxed detachment, was Prince William. For a senior royal, an event like this represents the final stretch of a demanding schedule. The formal handshakes had been completed, the official photographs had been taken, and the weight of representing the crown had temporarily eased. The prince believed his duties for the night were effectively over, imagining a quiet dinner and polite conversation with guests before slipping back into the sanctuary of private life. He felt, by his own admission, completely off-duty, a state of mind that is exceptionally rare and highly cherished for someone whose entire existence is lived under the unrelenting glare of the public eye. The atmosphere was one of sophisticated warmth, with the gentle strumming of an acoustic guitar filling the room as the audience prepared for a standard, predictable evening of celebrity-infused philanthropy. However, seated directly next to the future king was a young woman who was already rewriting the rules of the global music industry, a force of nature whose powers of persuasion would soon become the stuff of palace legend. Taylor Swift, then in her early 20s and rapidly ascending to a level of cultural dominance rarely seen in human history, was observing the same stage but viewing the evening through an entirely different lens. Where the prince saw a peaceful conclusion to a long working day, the American singer-songwriter saw an opportunity for an unforgettable, unscripted moment of pure artistic joy. What happened next remains one of the most astonishing deviations from royal etiquette ever recorded, a moment so surreal that the prince himself still grapples with how easily his defenses were completely dismantled. As Jon Bon Jovi prepared to launch into the iconic chords of one of his greatest anthems, a sudden heavy silence seemed to fall over the immediate space between the royal and the pop star. The transition from a structured, formal evening to a historical anomaly occurred in a matter of seconds, driven entirely by the subtle, commanding body language of a pop icon who recognized no boundaries when it came to the spirit of performance. With a confidence that defied the centuries-old rules governing physical contact with senior members of the royal family, Taylor Swift turned her full attention toward the future monarch. The room around them, filled with the murmurs of billionaires, aristocrats, and Hollywood elites, seemed to fade into the background as she made direct, unwavering eye contact with the prince. In a gesture that would have caused traditional court courtiers to gasp in sheer disbelief, she reached out and placed her hand gently but firmly on Prince William's arm, anchoring his attention completely. There was no hesitation, no deferential bowing, and no adherence to the rigid social distance that typically insulates the House of Windsor from the rest of humanity. Instead, there was only the raw, magnetic charm of a global superstar who knew exactly what she wanted. Looking him straight in the eye, she delivered a simple, smiling command that would instantly shatter his plans for a quiet, relaxing evening. She told him, with an effortless blend of warmth and absolute certainty, that it was time for them to get up and sing. To this day, the prince confesses to a feeling of total bewilderment when reflecting on that exact micro-moment, unable to explain the psychological phenomenon that took over his senses. For an individual trained from birth to maintain perfect composure, to never be led or manipulated by public situations, and to always remain the focal point of dignity, the response was entirely unprecedented. He describes the sensation as being placed in an immediate, inescapable trance, a state where his critical thinking and royal conditioning simply evaporated under the influence of a singular, powerful personality. Without a second thought, without consulting his security detail, and without considering how the images would look to the global media the following morning, the future King of England reacted not like a seasoned statesman, but like an obedient, enthusiastic participant completely caught up in the magic of the moment. He rose from his seat, his mind entirely blank, and prepared to follow the young American artist onto the brightly lit stage, stepping directly into a spotlight that would test his composure like never before. As he began the walk toward the microphone, the contrast between his internal panic and his external appearance became a masterclass in psychological survival. Outwardly, he maintained the flawless, serene image of a British prince, dressed in an immaculate black tie tuxedo, moving with the measured grace expected of his station. But beneath that tailored jacket and the crisp white shirt, a frantic internal struggle was underway. The prince would later compare himself to a swan gliding across a peaceful lake, presenting an image of absolute tranquility to the world, while beneath the water's surface, its little legs are paddling with desperate, exhausted speed. The internal heat, the sudden rush of adrenaline, and the terrifying realization of what he was about to do created a storm of anxiety that threatened to break through his carefully cultivated mask. He was stepping into the unknown, stripped of his royal script, about to perform a legendary rock anthem alongside two of the biggest names in music history, and the entire world was watching. The moment Prince William's polished leather shoes stepped onto the wooden planks of the makeshift stage inside Kensington Palace, the atmosphere in the room shifted from an elegant, aristocratic gathering into a historical anomaly. Standing beside him was Taylor Swift, radiant with the effortless energy of a performer who commanded stadiums worldwide, and John Bon Jovi, an icon of American rock who stood ready with an acoustic guitar to anchor this bizarre, beautiful collision of worlds. The audience, consisting of young people supported by the Centrepoint charity alongside some of the most recognizable figures in the global entertainment industry, collectively held their breath. For a senior member of the British royal family, the stage is a familiar place, but only when shielded by a heavy podium, a carefully prepared speech, and the absolute predictability of state protocol. To stand before a microphone with no script, no rehearsal, and no royal buffer was an act of extreme vulnerability. A public tightrope walk where the slightest misstep would be broadcast across the globe. As Jon Bon Jovi struck the opening acoustic chords of his timeless 1986 anthem, the unmistakable rhythm of a song born in the working-class neighborhoods of New Jersey began to echo through the historic royal halls of a British palace, creating an astonishing juxtaposition that no one in attendance could have ever predicted. The initial seconds on stage were an exercise in pure survival for the future king, who found himself thrust into an environment where his titles and royal heritage offered absolutely no protection. The music began to build, and with it, the palpable tension in the room grew as everyone waited to see how the prince would handle a situation that was completely outside his comfort zone. It was at this critical juncture that the profound, stabilizing influence of Taylor Swift became the anchor for the entire performance. Recognizing the immense pressure resting on the prince's shoulders, she utilized her extraordinary stage presence to turn a potentially awkward royal appearance into a genuine, shared human experience. She did not overshadow him. Instead, she shared the spotlight, using her vocals to create a safe musical canvas upon which the prince could find his footing. As the first verses of the song progressed, the audience watched in fascination as the rigid, tightly wound posture of the British royal began to subtly loosen. The sheer, infectious energy of the music, combined with the reassuring presence of the two global superstars flanking him, began to dismantle the walls of protocol that had governed his entire life. The prince, who later admitted to sweating profusely beneath his immaculate black tie attire, began to realize that the only way through the experience was to fully embrace the absurdity and the joy of the moment, letting go of the constant need for royal perfection. By the time the performance reached the iconic chorus, the initial anxiety that had gripped the prince began to give way to something far more authentic and powerful. The transformation was visible to everyone in the room. The heavy burden of representing a centuries-old institution seemed to lift from his shoulders, replaced by the raw, unscripted enthusiasm of an ordinary person caught up in the magic of a legendary song. When the moment arrived to deliver the famous soaring lines of the chorus, Prince William did not hold back. He leaned into the microphone, his voice joining in harmony with Taylor Swift's melodic tones and Jon Bon Jovi's gravelly rock vocals, belting out the words to a song that symbolized resilience and hope. The spectacle of the future Supreme Governor of the Church of England singing a classic rock anthem about working-class survival was a moment of pure, unadulterated cultural surrealism. The crowd, sensing the historic nature of what they were witnessing, erupted into cheers, their energy feeding back onto the stage and pushing the performance to even greater heights. It was no longer a stiff, obligatory royal appearance designed to satisfy a charitable photo opportunity. It had transformed into a genuine, high-octane rock performance that completely shattered the traditional boundaries between the British monarchy and modern popular culture. As the song reached its grand crescendo, the collective energy inside the palace walls reached a fever pitch, cementing this spontaneous trio as one of the most unforgettable pop culture moments of the 21st century. The sheer joy radiating from the stage was palpable, a refreshing departure from the carefully manicured public images that typically define both global superstars and royal figures. Prince William, despite his lack of professional vocal training, managed to maintain his composure and deliver a performance that was deeply endearing to everyone present. The chemistry between the three individuals, each a titan in their respective, vastly different worlds, was undeniable. driven by a mutual respect and a shared commitment to the charitable cause that had brought them together. When the final chords of the acoustic guitar faded into the air, a momentary silence was instantly shattered by a deafening ovation from the exclusive crowd. The prince, flashing a genuine, relieved smile that looked entirely different from his standard diplomatic grin, shared a warm, triumphant moment with Swift and Bon Jovi on stage, acknowledging the successful completion of a musical feat that had seemed utterly impossible just 10 minutes prior. Stepping away from the microphone and returning to the safety of the audience, the immediate aftermath of the performance brought a wave of intense reflection for the young prince. The adrenaline that had carried him through the performance began to subside, leaving behind a profound sense of disbelief at his own actions. For a man whose entire life is defined by self-control, the realization that he had just performed a rock duet on a whim, entirely because a pop star had asked him to, was both terrifying and deeply humbling. He would later recount that even years after the event, the mere thought of that night still induces a wave of self-conscious cringing, an internal reaction that highlights just how far he had stepped outside his comfort zone. Yet, beneath the lingering embarrassment lay a deeper realization about the changing nature of the monarchy and its relationship with the modern world. That single, unscripted evening did more to humanize the future king than years of carefully planned public relations campaigns ever could. It demonstrated a capacity for spontaneity, humor, and relatability that resonated deeply with a contemporary audience, proving that even the most tradition-bound individuals can find common ground through the universal language of music and shared human connection. To truly understand why this extraordinary evening at Kensington Palace continues to resonate so deeply across global media and cultural studies, one must examine the broader context of the individuals involved and the profound fan impact of the charity that brought them together. The event was organised to benefit Centrepoint, the UK's leading youth homelessness charity, an organisation that holds an incredibly deep emotional significance for Prince William. Long before he became the Prince of Wales, a young William was introduced to the harsh realities of homelessness by his late mother, Diana, Princess of Wales. She famously took both William and his brother Harry to visit homeless shelters when they were just young boys, determined to ensure that her children understood the world outside the gilded walls of royal palaces. This foundational experience shaped William's lifelong commitment to social issues, leading him to become the official patron of Centrepoint in 2005. Therefore, the gala was not merely a superficial social gathering for the prince. It was a deeply personal mission to shine a massive spotlight on vulnerable young people who had been pushed to the margins of society. The presence of international megastars like Taylor Swift and Jon Bon Jovi was a deliberate, strategic effort to leverage global celebrity culture to raise crucial funds and awareness for a cause that lay at the very core of his public identity. The biographies of the two musical icons who joined the prince on stage that night reveal a fascinating intersection of philanthropy, artistic brilliance, and an innate understanding of public diplomacy. Jon Bon Jovi, born John Francis Bon Jovi Jr., in New Jersey, has spent decades utilizing his massive global platform to combat poverty and homelessness through his own JBJ Soul Foundation, making him the perfect musical ambassador for the Centrepoint Gala. His iconic track, which served as the soundtrack for the royal duet, was a song about economic hardship and sticking together through difficult times, a theme that mirrored the struggles of the very youths Centrepoint works to protect. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift was already demonstrating the early stages of the unparalleled cultural and economic influence that would define her career as a historic force in the entertainment industry. Her participation in the event highlighted her unique ability to navigate vastly different social spheres, moving effortlessly from American stadiums to the historic halls of British royalty. Her intuitive understanding of human connection allowed her to break through the traditional stiffness of a royal gala, recognizing that an authentic, spontaneous moment would generate far more global attention for the charity than a standard formal speech ever could. The long-term legacy of this spontaneous collaboration stretches far beyond a simple night of entertainment, serving as a powerful case study in the modern evolution of the British monarchy. For centuries, the royal family maintained an aura of untouchable, distant mystique, relying on rigid protocol to preserve its authority and respect. However, in the 21st century, a changing media landscape demands a different kind of leadership, one defined by authenticity, accessibility, and emotional intelligence. When Prince William chose to listen to Taylor Swift, step away from his comfortable seat, and join her on stage, he signaled a significant generational shift in how the royal family interacts with the public. It demonstrated that the future king possessed the confidence to step outside his comfort zone, laugh at himself, and engage directly with the prevailing currents of modern global culture. This willingness to embrace vulnerability in a public setting ultimately strengthened his connection with a younger, more global audience, proving that the ancient institution of the monarchy could remain relevant and relatable in a rapidly evolving world. The images and stories from that night became a permanent part of his public legacy, illustrating a leader who is both deeply respectful of historical tradition and entirely capable of modern human connection. Years later, when the prince revisited these memories on a popular audio fitness series, his candid reflections offered a rare, fascinating glimpse into the internal psychology of a working royal. He openly discussed the intense social anxiety, the self-doubt, and the physical discomfort he experienced during those few minutes on stage, stripping away the flawless veneer that typically covers royal public appearances. By describing his internal state as a paddling swan trying to maintain a calm exterior, he validated a universal human experience that anyone who has faced public speaking or performance anxiety could instantly relate to. His admission that he still cringes at the memory added an extra layer of genuine, self-deprecating humor that only served to make him more endearing to listeners worldwide. This retrospective storytelling highlighted a mature leader who is entirely comfortable with his past vulnerabilities, using his own experiences to encourage others to step out of their comfort zones and embrace the unexpected opportunities that life presents. It reinforced the idea that leadership is not about being flawless or immune to fear, but about having the courage to show up, participate, and find joy in the moment despite the internal panic. Ultimately, the night Taylor Swift convinced a future king to sing a rock anthem remains a beautiful, shining example of the unpredictable magic that can occur when different worlds collide for a common, noble purpose. It stands as a testament to the power of music to dissolve social barriers, break through rigid institutional protocols, and unite people across vast cultural divides. The funds raised during that historic winter gala provided vital support, shelter, and opportunities for countless young people facing homelessness, ensuring that the legacy of that spontaneous performance extends far beyond the realm of pop culture trivia. As the story continues to be told and celebrated by generations of music fans and royal watchers alike, it serves as a permanent reminder that underneath the heavy crowns, the global fame, and the intense public scrutiny, the individuals who shape our world are ultimately human beings capable of sharing a simple, joyful, and completely unscripted moment